Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack's little love goes snick, snick, snick. Today we're going to talk about Spring-Heeled Jack from Lost Omens Monsters of Myth on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Happy Halloween, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that's ready to vault into action and talk about today's monster. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome back to Monsters of Myth, a series where we take a look at, well, the monsters of myth from the book Lost Omens Monsters of Myth. I use only the most creative of naming schemes on this channel. In honor of Halloween, for my Game Master focused content, I'm taking a dive into a book that I never got a chance to properly review earlier this year, Lost Omens Monsters of Myth, which provides details on legendary monsters in and around the Golarion campaign setting. There are a variety of different monsters in this book, everything from mighty Linorms to Golarion's equivalent of the abominable snowman, but today I'd like to take a look at a little bit of a simpler creature from Monsters of Myth known as Spring-Heeled Jack. This small-sized but quite murderous creature can be spotted around the Ustalav capital of Caliphas, where he is known to engage in things such as robbery, extortion, arson, and, on more than a few occasions, murder. He is covered in short blue fur, has prominent devil horns on top of his head, and one of his most notable tactics is his rumored ability to leap great distances, sometimes propelling himself all the way on top of buildings from street level. Spring-Heeled Jack is a fantastic villain if you're interested in a murder mystery style campaign, so today we're going to dive into Spring-Heeled Jack and some of the information that Lost Omens Monsters of Myth gives us about him. We'll do a little bit of player character focused content before turning around and talking in depth about some of the material that Paizo gives us for the Game Master side of the screen. But before we do all of that, don't forget to do all of the YouTube stuff. Remember, if you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my free Discord and my Patreon. And as always, please jump down into the comments section. Let me know your thoughts, your ideas. I love to talk to you guys. Alright, let's get started. So I'd like to start today with some general information that is not necessarily much of a spoiler for player characters who might encounter Spring-Heeled Jack. And we've already kind of talked about this a little bit. Spring-Heeled Jack is often described as a small-sized devil-like figure. He's known to wear a cloak, carry a knife, and has been described as having the ability to spit blue flames out of his mouth. He is a notoriously violent figure whose crimes range from robbing people in alleyways to theft and arson, and of course the most severe charges of all, he is associated with a number of murders in and around the town. While many people have tried to hunt down Spring-Heeled Jack, no one has been successful, and there is even common disagreement over how many crimes can actually be traced back to this particular figure. So if you're interested in a shadowy race against time to stop a killer before he strikes again, Spring-Heeled Jack is a fantastic villain that you can drop into, well, a lot of low-level Pathfinder 2e games. Now, from a player's perspective, there's not a lot of content that is directly PC-focused in terms of Spring-Heeled Jack. He does have some unique magical items, so if you're a player who has the opportunity to chase this killer down, you might be able to get a rare cloak or dagger from this villain once you defeat him, but there's no other PC-focused game content related to Spring-Heeled Jack, so don't expect unique subclasses, character feats, or things like that from this particular section of Monsters of Myth. This is mostly just a really fun murder mystery style villain that players can go up against. And speaking of murder mystery, this is the portion of the video where I need to tell any players in my audience, do not go any farther if you don't want the details of Spring Hill Jack spoiled for you. Instead, send your game master this way so they can be part of this conversation, and who knows, you might be chasing down this mysterious murderer in the near future. Alright, game masters, let's dive in a little more in depth and talk about Spring Hill Jack and how you can use this villain inside of your games. Now, I will be posting a link to Spring Hill Jack's statistics from Archives of Nethys down in the video description, so you can definitely go down there and check out this monster in depth if you're interested in reading up on it. But like most of the content that is found in Monsters of Myth, I really do recommend going to the book itself because they devote several pages to Spring Hill Jack and giving you different options and ideas on how to use this villain. In particular, Spring Hill Jack is a challenge rating 3 small-sized Fey creature that can be found on pages 90 through 95 of Lost Omens Monsters of Myth. And that quick blurb brings us to a couple of important secrets about Spring Hill Jack and how you might use him inside of your stories. The first and most important secret about Spring Hill Jack is, despite the fact that he looks very much like a devil or a demon, he is in fact rather a Fey creature instead. Whether this similarity in appearance is intentional or just some random circumstance, we don't know for sure, but Spring Hill Jack's appearance as a devil causes many people who investigate the creature to think that they are dealing with demons or devils and to take that sort of approach when trying to deal with him. This is one of the reasons that so many people have failed to stop Spring Hill Jack and his various crime sprees. The other reason is, there's more than one Spring Hill Jack. Yep, that's right. Most people assume that Spring Hill Jack is a singular entity, when in fact, the Spring Hill Jack is actually a type of Fey creature that is drawn to violence and murder. One of the reasons for there being such a diversity of reports and so many questions around, did Spring Hill Jack commit this crime or that crime? Well, part of it is Spring Hill Jack is actually different creatures operating completely independent of one another. Spring Hill Jack works alone, but there is more than one Spring Hill Jack, and it is possible that player characters might encounter more than one of these creatures through the course of their adventures. So as a game master, the first thing to know about adding Spring Hill Jack to your story, there is a lot of misinformation about the creature that has naturally evolved from his appearance and from his behaviors, and players who are investigating this creature are very likely to have a lot of bad assumptions and very likely to follow a lot of false leads, and as a storyteller, you want to plan for this. One of the reasons I really like Spring Hill Jack, even though he is a low-level threat, he's only a level 3 monster, the natural mysteries around this creature are the sort of things that can send players on a lot of different wild goose chases, and I think that makes for a very fun story. It may take them a while to catch the true culprit, but when they finally do, it's that much more rewarding. Now, as I've mentioned, Spring Hill Jack is a level 3 creature, meaning that he is very much an appropriate challenge for a low-level adventuring party. He's the sort of creature that they might start investigating at first or second level, and then finally confront at the climax of the adventure on or around level 3. You can naturally use things like the elite statistics to push him a little bit higher, but ultimately he is intended for lower level play. Now when you hear level 3 monster, you might think he probably doesn't have a lot, but actually Spring Hill Jack comes with a lot of fun abilities. None of it is super overpowered, but when taken together makes for a fun and challenging encounter. Spring Hill Jack is going to have access to Frightful Presence, Attack of Opportunity. He's going to have the Blue Fire breath weapon that I've mentioned before. He has an ability called Malicious Stab, which is a slightly more situational version of Sneak Attack, essentially. And then his most obvious ability is Vault, which is the super jump ability that he comes with. On top of that, he also has his 2 notorious magical items, his cloak, which gives him a bonus on stealth checks, and a dagger known as the Little Love, which allows him to use his vault ability as a reaction after successfully hitting with the dagger. Ultimately, all of these things taken together make for a very mobile and a very reactive monster that can really give a party a good and interesting fight / chase scene. In fact, I'll go ahead and say, of Spring-Heeled Jack's stat block and abilities taken together, he's actually got quite a bit for a level 3 monster, but he is intended to be a solo monster, and so I think that's why Paizo gave him some extra stuff relative to a normal monster at that threat level. Still, as a storyteller, you want to be aware he's got several different things going on. You want to be familiar with those. And you also want to be familiar with the fact that his cloak and dagger, if you use them as rewards for your player, are slightly above curve. And you'll want to make sure that you're keeping the treasure to your party appropriately balanced, because they can get some fun magic items if they take those from his body. But you can easily see how a Spring-Heeled Jack is an evasive and intelligent threat that your party is going to have to work hard to successfully locate, corner, and ultimately take down, making for the kind of villain that can be a pretty serious story arc in one of your campaigns. But, as we've said, Spring-Heeled Jack is not a unique creature. There are other Jacks, and they could totally pop up after your characters solve the case. And if your players are not aware that Jack is not a unique monster, there is a very real possibility that a second Jack's arrival could be a very disturbing event in the campaign as they try to figure out how did he return. Lost Omens Monsters of Myth also refers to what are known as Greater Jacks, which are Spring-Heeled Jacks that are slightly more powerful than the standard variant. Paizo doesn't give us a full stat block for a Greater Jack, but they do give suggestions for building out the stat block for a Greater Jack if you're interested in using such a creature. You could probably level the creature up to level 5, 6, 7, something like that, use it as a more serious threat at later levels in the game. And one of the things Paizo does is it offers 3 variant abilities that you could give a Greater Jack to make it a little bit more dangerous or a little bit more difficult for your party to deal with. The first ability is called Gentleman's Guise, which is essentially a powerful illusion that the Spring-Heeled Jack can use to cover its appearance a little bit better than normal, because let's go ahead and admit the person walking around with the cloak over their head is kind of suspicious from the word go. Gentleman's Guise makes Spring-Heeled Jack a little more effective at moving around a city undetected. Another nice escape-oriented alternate ability is called Vanishing Leap, and essentially this does exactly what you think it does. After the Spring-Heeled Jack uses his vault ability to leap some ridiculous distance, he then turns invisible. If you want to make your Jack harder to track down, this is a fantastic tool. However, I really want to focus in on the final variant ability, because if I'm being honest, I actually think you should switch out one of the base Jack abilities with this, because I think it's a better fit. It's an ability called Resonant Terror. Resonant Terror is intended as a replacement ability for the Frightful Presence that the normal Spring-Heeled Jack has. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Frightful Presence, and I think it's completely appropriate for a Spring-Heeled Jack, but Resonant Terror is more of a focused fear ability, where the Spring-Heeled Jack focuses on a particular individual and burns his visage into the eyes of his victim. The frightened condition that results sticks with the target much longer. And honestly, I think Resonant Terror is a much better fit for this style of creature than the normal Frightful Presence. So, personal opinion as a game master, if you want to use a Spring-Heeled Jack in one of your stories, even if it's the base version, I would switch out Resonant Terror in place of Frightful Presence. I think it's a better fit, as it really just drives home the serial killer vibe associated with a Spring-Heeled Jack. Now, the last thing I want to talk about very briefly here is, what about high-level play? Paizo, in presenting the Spring-Heeled Jack, has presented a threat that is going to be used almost exclusively with low-level or at most mid-tier parties, and this creature doesn't really function well against high-level players. Its abilities, the way that it tends to operate, those are the kinds of things that a high-level party is going to be able to get around and defeat very easily, and Spring Heel Jack really doesn't translate to high-level play very well. But that being said, it is important to note that the line between serial killer and assassin is a little bit blurry. Spring Heel Jack is a type of Fae, and it is very possible for a Spring Heel Jack or the greater variant to be operating at the behest of a member of the Fae courts or one of the eldest, and the Spring Heel Jack's targets may be more than just random victims of its violence. So, if you're a game master who is interested in using a Spring Heel Jack, but you have a higher level party, one easy way to incorporate them into the story is to use them as political pawns for some sort of scheme that a Fae court might be doing, and your players can go from stopping the murders into very quickly unraveling whatever these political machinations might be. But that's a quick introduction to the Spring Heel Jack and some of the ways that a storyteller might make use of this creature at their gaming table. So I guess the time has come to turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts about the Spring Heel Jack or the greater Spring Heel Jack, and what kind of stories do you think you would use this creature in? What do you think of Jack's abilities and items, and is there anything else you would give them before adding them to your game? Jump down into the comments section and let me know what you think. As always, don't forget to do the YouTube stuff like, share, subscribe, check out Discord and Patreon. But as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.